If you're hearing these words, maybe you once felt the same way I did many years ago. The feeling of walking very fast, but not knowing whether you're heading in the right direction. One winter afternoon, I met a man standing in front of an old map hanging in a train station. He stared at it for a long time. I asked, "Are you trying to find your way?" He smiled gently. "I'm not lost. I'm just walking without knowing where I'm going." That sentence stayed with me the whole way home. You see, sometimes people aren't lost because they take a wrong turn, but because they never stop to look back at where they were heading. Life is like that too. Just 1 degree off, and you won't notice. A week passes, still no sign. A month, still convinced things are fine. But after a year, you look back and realize you're far from the life you wanted to live. And the saddest part is this: most of us don't lose our lives in big decisions, but in the weeks that repeat themselves, exactly the same as before. I believe there are small rituals, very small, that can pull us back on track before it's too late. And today, I want to share with you 7 principles I wish I had known earlier. They help me realign my path, my mind, and the way I used my life. And I believe one of the principles at the end of this video could change your entire upcoming year. If you're ready, let's begin. Principle 1, the pause. 2 minutes that can change your direction. You know, I used to think that the big turning points in life always came from dramatic choices. Changing jobs, moving homes, starting a project, or abandoning an old lifestyle. But the longer I lived, the more I realized something very different. Life doesn't change because of big decisions, but because of the small moments when we dare to pause. I remember a story from many years ago, when I was still a young man with empty pockets but a head full of ambition. Every morning, I rushed to work as if slowing down even a little would cause life to leave me behind. One day, I saw an old man sweeping leaves by the roadside. He worked very slowly. I felt impatient for him. I asked, "Why don't you work a little faster to finish?" He looked up at me, smiling as gently as the early sun. Do you know the difference between someone on the right path and someone who's lost? The person on the right path knows how to pause. That sentence slipped past me back then. But a few years later, when I was exhausted, when all my big plans failed to produce the results I wanted, I finally understood. I had never paused. I just ran. And like anyone who runs without ever looking ahead, I ran in the wrong direction without even knowing it. 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes of stillness every weekend, it sounds like nothing. But those 2 minutes are like a tiny needle that can adjust the compass of your entire life. Imagine a small boat at sea. When the water is calm and the sky is clear, just a slight shift of the rudder will send the boat drifting off course without you noticing. A day is fine, a week is still fine, but a month, then a year, and that boat will dock at a shore far from the place you intended to reach. Our lives are the same. No one gets lost because of one foolish decision. We get lost because we don't pause long enough to notice we're off track. The pause, just 2 minutes, is what most people avoid. Why? Because pausing means looking deeply at what isn't right. Pausing means facing yourself, the half-hearted choices, the bad habits, the things you know you should do but keep postponing to next week. People don't fear change as much as they fear confronting what they've wasted. I've seen people live 10 whole years only to realize they never once stopped to ask, "Where am I going?" They just wake up, work, stay busy, and keep staying busy like a wind-up clock, running until the energy runs out. And what breaks my heart most is this: some people are not lazy, not incompetent. They just don't realize they're heading the wrong way. Until one day they pause, just a little, and everything changes. I want you to picture this. Every weekend, before the world demands something from you, before people pull you into urgent tasks, before the noise of life swallows your clarity, you give yourself 2 minutes of absolute stillness. No phone, no calendar, no thoughts about work. Just sit and listen to what your mind is saying. You'll be surprised. It's strange how, when you pause long enough, life begins to say things you never heard while you were busy. Sometimes you'll hear an old exhaustion, sometimes a forgotten desire, sometimes a hidden corner you haven't touched in a long time. And sometimes you hear yourself, a very small but very true voice telling you that you need to change direction. The pause is not a ritual, it is a compass. It's how you adjust 1 degree before you spend an entire year fixing mistakes. At first glance, 2 minutes can't save anyone. But let me tell you this, 2 minutes can save an entire life if they help you realize you're walking the wrong way. So before we continue the rest of this journey, before you adjust your habits, plan your schedule, or set goals, give yourself the smallest but most powerful gift. Pause for a moment, because in that moment, your life begins a new chapter. Principle 2, open your calendar, the most honest mirror of your life. There's something interesting about a calendar that few people notice. It doesn't know how to lie. People are great at excuses, at hiding, at soothing themselves. But a calendar isn't. You open it, and it reveals everything you did or didn't do. I still remember the first time I truly looked at my calendar with complete honesty. It was a late weekend afternoon. I sat in a small rented room, sunlight coming through the window and falling onto a worn paper calendar. I hadn't opened it in a long time. Not because I was busy, but because I was afraid to face what I had been avoiding. I flipped each page and suddenly felt a weight in my chest. There were too many empty spaces. Empty days when I promised myself I would do something important but didn't. Empty weeks when I said I needed to focus, but let myself get pulled into things that led me nowhere. Empty spaces of neglect. What made me sad wasn't that the calendar was empty, but that it was brutally honest. It showed exactly what I gave my time to and what had been missing from my life for months. An old friend of mine, a successful entrepreneur in his 40s, once told me, "Jim, if you want to know a person's future, look at their calendar from the last 90 days. I thought he was joking, but when I looked at mine that day, I understood he was right. Because a calendar doesn't show what you dream about. It shows what you prioritize. And sometimes, the distance between the life you want and the life you have is written right inside those pages. Imagine this. Life is like a garden. Every event, every meeting, every habit, every time you give someone your time is a seed you plant. When you open your calendar, you're looking at your own garden. And you'll see spots full of weeds, useless tasks, unnecessary meetings, habits that drain you. You'll also see empty soil, places where you should have planted but didn't. And maybe just one small corner where things are truly blooming. You don't need to blame yourself. Everyone lets their garden grow wild sometimes. But what separates a grown-up from someone drifting through life is this. A grown-up dares to open their calendar and face it. I once met an older gentleman, very calm and composed. He had a habit I had never seen before. Every weekend, he placed his calendar on the table, played soft music, and looked at it as if looking into a mirror. I asked, "What are you checking for?" He said, "I'm checking whether I lived according to my values." That sentence changed the entire way I look at a calendar. Because opening your calendar isn't about seeing how much you did, but whether you lived right. Did you make time for your health? For your family? For learning, growth, quietness? Or are all your weeks the same, chasing urgencies, other people's demands, and things that don't nourish you? The calendar, like a mirror that never cracks, will answer everything. One thing I learned is this: no one becomes successful by accident. They schedule what matters, and they protect it like a vow, not because they're talented, but because they're honest with themselves. If you look at your calendar this week and something feels off, that's okay. That feeling is the first gift of change. Remember this: a calendar isn't just for writing tasks, it's for reflecting on your life. And when you dare to look at it with absolute honesty, you've already walked half the journey toward correcting your direction. Principle 3, eliminate noise. Clear out the things that steal your life. When you've paused and when you've opened your calendar, the next step is always the hardest: eliminating noise. It sounds simple, but to do it, you have to bravely face a sad truth that most of what steals your life is not the big things, but the tiny, trivial things you allow to stay for too long. I once knew a man named Michael. He was the kind of person who said yes to everything people asked, agreed to every invitation. His schedule was packed from morning till night, but it was full of things that didn't move him forward even an inch. One time, I asked him, "Michael, what in this calendar actually helps you move in the right direction?" He looked at the page full of scribbles and stayed silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "Jim, I don't know anymore. I do a lot, but it feels like none of it really belongs to me." I realized many people live just like Michael. They're not lazy. They're not incapable. They just don't know how to cross out the things that don't belong to them. You know, life has so many things that are like little pieces of paper the wind blows into your room. If you don't clean them up right away, they pile up until there's no space left for you to live comfortably. The stream of noise in your life is just like that. Tasks that aren't important but take up your time mind. Meetings you agree to just out of politeness care. Favors of, can you help me with this real quick? That take your whole afternoon. Bad habits that sneak into the best hours of your day. And all the tiny emotions that drain your mind. Eliminating noise doesn't mean erasing things, so your calendar is empty. Eliminating noise means reclaiming space so your life can breathe. An old teacher once told me a story about a gardener. Every morning, he walked around his little garden and pulled out each weed. I asked, why do you do that every day? Most people just let the weeds grow and pull them all at once. He laughed. Jim, if you let the weeds grow freely, by the time you pull them out, you'll tear up the roots of the flowers too. That sentence stayed in my mind for a long time. In life, many people let the noise spread. Then when they want to start something important, they have to fight through a whole forest of trivial things just because they didn't pull them out bit by bit. And then they call that a busy life. But really, it's just a life that hasn't been cleaned up. I once had a week where every day felt the same. I woke up busy, went to sleep busy, and could find no time for myself. At the end of the week, I opened my calendar and tried crossing out things that weren't truly necessary. At first, I thought I would only be able to erase 1 or 2 lines, but when I actually did it, I was shocked. There were things I had kept for years just out of habit. There were meetings I attended only because I was afraid to say no. There were habits that took up my best mornings, and there were things I only kept because I was afraid of disappointing others. When I crossed out 30% of the things that weren't really me, I felt as if someone had just pulled a heavy curtain off my body. Space in your calendar is like space in your mind. When it's open, you breathe more easily. When it's clean, you see the path more clearly. Eliminating noise requires something I believe everyone has, even if we sometimes forget: the power of choice. You have the right to choose what gets to stay in your life. You have the right to choose what doesn't get to move into next week. And you have the right to put your life above other people's expectations. The important thing is this: you must cross things out before you add things in. Like cleaning a room before bringing in new furniture. Like clearing a garden before planting seeds. Like clearing your mind before starting a new year. Take a look at your calendar and ask one simple question: does this really belong to me? If the answer is no, be brave enough to cross it out. Every line you strike through is one step toward taking back your life. And once you've cleared away the things that no longer fit, you'll have space for the next important thing, the thing we're about to talk about right now. Principle 4, write down what matters. Clarity creates power. When you've cleared out the noise, the next thing you need to do is not add more tasks to your schedule. What's far more important is to write down what truly matters. It sounds simple, but it's at this step that people's lives split into 2 very different directions. I once asked a group of young people at a seminar many years ago, how many of you know what you want in the upcoming week? More than half raised their hands. But when I asked, how many of you have written it down? Only a few scattered hands remained. You see, people think they know what they want, but when they don't write it down, those desires live only in their heads where they are easiest to be swept away. I remember a story from when I was young. Back then, I was easily swept up by momentary excitement. I would tell myself, next week, I'm going to focus on my health. But when the next week came, I got pulled into urgent tasks again. Then I comforted myself. Fine, let's start the week after. And that week after stretched on for nearly 2 years. It wasn't until I met an older mentor that things changed. He told me, Jim, if you don't write down what matters, it means you're letting life decide for you. That sentence was like a wake-up call. Writing things down is not about remembering. Writing things down is about committing. Some people tell me they don't like writing things down because it makes them feel pressured. I tell them, if the important things in your life make you feel pressured, then the unimportant things will steal your life. Writing down what matters has a strange power. When you put pen to paper, when the words take shape, that thing feels stamped into your consciousness. You no longer just want to do it, you confirm that it deserves a place in your life. I want you to imagine a farmer standing in a wide field. He has a bag of seeds in his hand. But if he doesn't decide clearly where he will plant them, the wind will scatter them everywhere and nothing will grow properly. You are the same. Your time is your seed. If you don't clearly decide where to sow it, it will fall into meaningless places. Over the years, I've noticed something. Successful people never let a new week begin without knowing the 3 important things they must complete. Not 10, not 20, just 3. Because the things that truly matter are never as many as we think. I once met a woman who was the chief accountant of a small company. She had a very special habit. Every Sunday, she wrote exactly 3 lines on a blank sheet of paper, then stuck it on the inside of her cabinet door. When I asked what it was, she said, "These are the 3 things that keep me on track. Everything else is just noise." I looked at those 3 lines, simple but sharp as needles. 1 thing for my health, 1 thing for my career, 1 thing for my family. And I understood why she was always calm, clear, and composed in how she lived. Writing down what matters is not about making an endlessly long list. It's about filtering, selecting, and confirming what truly deserves your time. I want you to spend 10 minutes at the end of the week after you've cleared the noise to write down 3 things that must appear in your life in the upcoming week. Don't choose based on urgency. Choose based on what will move you in the right direction in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years from now. When you write down what matters, you're telling yourself, I choose my life. And that feeling, let me tell you, is more powerful than any motivation. One more interesting thing, when you write down what matters, you will naturally see what doesn't the things you once thought you needed, but that actually contribute nothing to the journey you're on. You will see more clearly, feel lighter, more awake, and more decisive. I've always believed that clarity doesn't come from thinking more, but from writing down what you need to keep. And that clarity will lead you to the next step, a step that helps you look deeper into yourself to see what's pulling you off course. Let's move on. Principle 5, look back at yourself. 5 questions that can guide your life. Once you've cleared the noise and written down what matters, you'll notice something interesting. You feel clearer, but you still don't fully understand yourself. A clean schedule isn't enough. A calmer mind isn't enough. You need a map to know where you're standing. And sometimes, to find your way again, you don't need more advice. You need questions that are truly powerful. I learned this from a man I met on a journey many years ago. He wasn't rich, not famous, didn't hold any special position, but he had something very few people do, a clarity that made anyone sitting with him feel like they were looking straight into themselves. One evening we sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the hills. I asked him, "How do you always know what you should do next in life?" He smiled and exhaled softly, as if he had been waiting for that question for a long time. "Jim, I just ask myself a few questions every weekend. They're not many, but they're enough to turn the boat of my life around." Those questions were simple. But you know, the simplest things go the deepest. And I want to share them with you. 5 questions that can correct the direction of an entire lifetime. The first question, what is pulling me in the wrong direction? We often think we're lost because we lack discipline or luck. But few people pause to ask, what is pulling me? It could be an old habit. It could be an unnecessary promise. It could be a fear you haven't named. It could be a relationship that makes you lose yourself bit by bit. In life, there are 2 kinds of forces. Forces that push you forward and forces that pull you off course. All you need is to remove the pulling forces. The rest of life becomes much lighter. The second question, what do I need to protect more? It sounds strange. People are used to protecting their assets, their jobs, their reputation, but the most precious things are often the most neglected. One afternoon, I asked an older father, what do you regret most in life? He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted far away as if searching for an old version of himself. Finally, he said, I regret not protecting my time for my family. Time, energy, health, peace, these things are more fragile than you think. If you don't protect them, the world will take them all and it won't ask for your permission. The third question, which habit is giving me 80% of my results? Everyone has a key habit, a small habit that determines the direction of everything else. For me, it's spending 30 minutes every morning reading and taking notes. It's small, but it changed how I see the world. Think about it. What is something you do regularly for just 10-15 minutes that makes your life noticeably better? That habit is the underground stream that nourishes your entire journey. Protect it like a key. The fourth question, what do I need to stop immediately this week? There are things you can't fix, you can only stop. A meeting that no longer serves you. A promise that's draining you. A habit that makes you stagnant. A thought that keeps dragging you back into the past. I once met a woman whose work schedule was packed. When I asked what she wanted to change, she said, "I think the most important thing I need to do is to do less." Sometimes growing up is not about doing more of the right things, but removing the wrong things. The fifth question, what win do I need next week? You don't need your entire life to change at once. You just need one small win to remind yourself that you're still moving in the right direction. A win could be maintaining one habit for 3 days straight. It could be waking up on time. It could be rewriting a page of your plan. It could be spending an evening with your family. Or simply keeping a promise to yourself. One small win, but it turns the rudder by 1 degree. That 1 degree, over time, will take you to a completely different life. These 5 questions are not here to test you. They are here to illuminate you, to help you see clearly what is truly you and what is just noise. And once you've looked deeply into yourself with these questions, you will need a tool to measure real progress, something that helps you see whether you're getting better or standing still. We're going to step into that right now. Principle, 6 weekly scorecard, a mirror that measures your energy, time, and progress. When you've examined yourself with powerful questions, when you've seen clearly what pulls you off track, what you need to protect, what you need to stop, it's time to answer another, much more important question. How did I live this week? Some people think that trying hard is enough, but I learned something very early on. Effort that isn't measured turns into an illusion. You think you're improving, but really you're just staying busy. You think you're changing, but really you're just spinning in the same old habits. And that's why I started using something I call the Weekly Scorecard. Not to grade your life, life shouldn't be graded like school, but to see whether you're living in alignment with what you've chosen. I first heard about a weekly scorecard from an older mentor. He was the quiet type, didn't talk much, but every sentence was deep as a well. One time, I asked him, "How do you know if you're moving in the right direction?" He handed me a small piece of paper with 3 lines. Time, energy, progress. Then he said, "Check these 3 every week, Jim. 3 small things, but they hold an entire lifetime." Back then, I didn't really understand, but I followed his advice. And what happened after a few weeks made me never drop this habit again. 1. Scoring time, because time never lies. I started looking at my calendar every weekend, not to see how much I did, but to see whether I used my time correctly. Some weeks I gave myself a 7. Some weeks only deserved a 4. But no matter what the score was, the truth showed up very clearly. I only made progress in the weeks when my time was going in the right direction. You don't need 50 hours of hard work. You just need a few hours of right work. There were weeks when I realized I'd spent too much time on social meetings that led nowhere. There were weeks when I saw I'd wasted entire mornings on tasks anyone could have done. There were weeks when I saw I'd neglected my dreams because of things that were urgent but not important. Once you start scoring your time, it becomes so real you can't keep lying to yourself. 2. Scoring energy, because energy is what really fuels your steps. Some weeks you do very little, yet you feel like you truly lived fully. Some weeks you do a lot, but feel so drained you have no excitement left for what matters. That's why I score my energy. A farmer doesn't just count how many hours he worked, he also checks whether the soil is fertile. You're the same. This week, was your energy good? Do you still have joy? Do you still have clarity? Or are you burning yourself out on things that aren't worth it? There were weeks when my energy score was only a 3. Not because I worked a lot, but because I didn't let my mind rest, didn't let my heart be still. When I started watching my energy the way you watch the weather, I began to see what was exhausting me and what was making me stronger. And that is the first step of maturity. 3. Scoring progress, because progress gives you a reason to keep going. Many people give up not because it's too hard, but because they can't see themselves moving forward. They can't see themselves getting even a little better. I use a very simple question. This week, did I move forward by even one small step? If the answer is yes, even a tiny bit, I give myself 1 point. If the answer is no, I give myself 0. It sounds simple, but that simplicity is where the power lies. Because life doesn't change through big leaps. It changes through small steps, steady steps, consistent steps, taken toward where you want to go. And the weekly scorecard shows you clearly, step by step. Once, I told my students, Don't try to be perfect every week. Try to be honest every week. Because when you're honest about your time, your energy, and your progress, you can't stay lost for too long. And you know what's interesting? When you score your week, you naturally want to live better next week. No one needs to push you. No one needs to check on you. You do it because you see yourself clearly and you choose to grow up. The weekly scorecard doesn't help you run faster. It helps you run better. It turns you by 1 degree every week. And after a year, you'll be standing in a completely different place. And once you know how to measure your progress, you're ready for the final principle, the smallest but most powerful one. Let's keep going. Principle 7, lift your life by 1 degree each week. A small rule for big change. You know, the longer I live, the more I realize that life doesn't change through big dramatic flips. It changes through very small things done right. When I was young, I used to think if I want to change my life, I need to do something big. Change jobs, move to a new city, start a new project, set huge goals. But the further I walked, the more I saw the things that create real transformation. Sit in the small steps you repeat consistently this week, then next week, then the whole year. I remember meeting an old sailor at a harbor. His face was sunburned, his eyes deep and calm as if they had seen thousands of horizons. I asked, "How do you sail such long journeys without getting lost?" He pointed out toward the sea and spoke softly. "We don't adjust by long distances, Jim. We adjust by tiny degrees. Off by 1 degree here, and you're lost by hundreds of kilometers out there. But right by 1 degree here, and it carries you to the right place for the whole voyage." And then I understood. Life is the same. Sometimes you just need to turn by 1 single degree. Just 1 degree. But in the right direction, and repeat it this week, next week, and the week after. I have a friend who completely changed his health just by walking 10 minutes every morning. Not running, not heavy workouts. Just 10 minutes, 1 small degree. A former colleague became much calmer simply by sitting still for 5 minutes before starting his day. 1 small degree. A mother kept warmth in her family just by dedicating 1 evening a week entirely to her children. 1 small degree. All of these things are quiet, simple, but it's that quietness and simplicity that makes them sustainable. People often quit not because what they're doing is too hard, but because they think it's too small to matter. But remember this, life doesn't change because of 1 explosive day. It changes because of ordinary weeks pointed in the right direction. I want you to ask yourself, if I lift my life by 1 degree this week, where will that lead me next year? You don't need to think big. You don't need to try to change everything. Just choose 1 small thing, something you can repeat, no matter how busy, tired, or challenged the week is. 1 degree could be reading 10 pages of a book, going to bed 15 minutes earlier, spending half an hour learning something you've delayed, writing down 1 thing you're grateful for, or simply dedicating the evening to someone you love. Just 1 degree, but make it your degree. A degree you can keep, a degree that moves you forward for real. I've met many people who changed dramatically for 1 week, then quit the next. They jumped too far, too hard, too fast, and then burned out. It's not that they were weak, they just forgot the old sailor's words. Hold the 1 degree, just 1. 1 degree keeps you from panicking. 1 degree keeps you from exhausting yourself. 1 degree lets you keep your inner peace. And that inner peace is what sustains long-term change. Imagine a year has passed. You didn't do anything spectacular, no grand leap. But week after week after week, you turned your life by exactly 1 degree. 1 degree times 52 weeks means 52 adjustments to your life's direction. You'll be standing somewhere your current self can hardly imagine. Not because you changed everything, but because you stayed faithful to the smallest, most consistent, most enduring thing. That is the power of the 1 degree rule. And if, by this point, something you heard has touched a place inside you, leave a comment below so I know you're still here with me. Thank you for spending your time here. And before we finish, let me ask you a question that might decide the direction of your upcoming week. What will you do this week to lift your life by 1 degree? If this video has been helpful, you can like, subscribe. But as long as you carry this 1 small degree with you when you leave, I believe your life will change.